sinazamuye ijwi ryanjye hejuru mumenyesha iby'ibi bihe.
Reverend Lewiss, I'm very happy to have you today and welcome to Amjambo Africa. I just want to first wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yes, and I know many people here know you, but yet this video is going to go over Maine and it's going to go all over the world. And for people who do not know you, if you can just give them a quick introduction as to who you are.
So my name is Kenneth I. Lewiss, Jr. I'm the pastor of the Green Memorial African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, part of a worldwide denomination of African-American churches, historic African-American churches across the country and across the globe. We have churches in the United States, in the Caribbean, in Africa, in India, in the UK, and some 4,000 congregations in West Africa, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, as well as Nigeria. We have churches in, I think, Malawi, South Africa. So we're all over the place. It's a denomination that was founded way back in the 1700s.
Wow.
So I pastor here in Portland, Maine. I've been here for 18 years. I'm native born in Boston, Massachusetts. So I've seen a few things and lived in a few places. The last 17 years, Maine has been my home. Portland has been my home. And I've watched Portland change over those 18 years, Maine change over those 18 years. I've been involved with a lot of the social and racial justice related work in this area since I arrived. And so the church that I pastor is historically African-American, Black church, but is wonderfully diverse. We have people from all across the diaspora, the Caribbean, as well as the continent. We have white, Latino, but it's still at its roots, in its feel, it's still a Black church.
Okay.
So we're excited about the opportunity to serve the people in the community through the church. I also work in the public health space. I work for the largest health organization, hospital organization in the state of Maine. So I'm very keenly aware of the issues with COVID-19 in our community and the disparities as it relates to positive cases in health. And most recently, as you know, I've been appointed to the Permanent Commission on the status of race, ethnicity, and indigenous populations for the state of Maine by our governor, Janet T. Mills.
Yes, congrats. That was going to be my next question. I was just going to congratulate you on this huge task that you've been tasked for. And that was going to, in fact, to be my question is, what is, I mean, this is a huge and complex terms, racial, indigenous, and Maine populations. And so what have you been tasked to do specifically, and what do you hope to accomplish? And with your colleague, Isaiah Reid, and somebody probably you know, and what do you?
I don't know the young man, but I think it's not just us. There's also other members of that commission as well who are part of it, and the law is called LD 777. Okay. What it lays out is this independent commission that's responsible for assessing the status and providing recommendations on, I would say, socioeconomic development for marginalized people who in this state may not have had access to capital, may not have had access to education, may not have had access to information, to understand how the system that exists today needs to work better for all people. But more specifically, those people who have been marginalized, our indigenous population, our Native American population, our Black and African American population. And I'm going to use those terms a little bit interchangeably because I know a lot of your readers or listeners look at the lens through immigration as being an immigrant Immigration is different, depends upon where you come from in this country, right?
I know.
So you can immigrate from certain places and not necessarily be considered an immigrant, especially first generation, next generation. But when you come to this country and you're Black, oftentimes the experience that you encounter is very, very different because of the history of racism in the United States. So I think our task is probably to gather lots of data, to be a data-driven group, to assess policy, to promote new policy that, from my perspective, helps us to be a more perfect union, even in our state, to be a beloved community, even in our state, to bring people together for the benefit of all, but also to take a look at the issues associated with the marginalization of some. And so that's what I see. My role as a faith-based leader, that's what my appointment is. I come to the table with a faith base, and I will do my best to represent all faiths. I'll talk to all people, because oftentimes our faith is what it keeps us. It keeps us whole and it keeps us healthy, and it allows us to seek justice in a just way. And I think that's an important aspect of, I think, what my role is as a commissioner on that commission.
So your recommendations, another word, would be forward to who? To who are you going to give those
because we're an independent commission. We can provide recommendations to the legislature. We can provide recommendations to the governor's office. We can provide recommendations to anyone we want to. It's a commission that's set outside of government, but somewhat part of government. It has been, the people that have been appointed by the various parties, the various chambers in the legislature, the governor's office, and represent kind of a broad perspective of individuals who then come together and start the process of assessing where we are, what's assessing access to information, and making sure that the consideration of all people is included in policy, in programs, in funding, and all of those various pieces.
So in other words, are you going to base your assessment on the researchers or just?
We have to be data driven, but we also have to be experience driven too. And so there's lots of data about disparities. There's lots of data about economic injustice. There's a lot of data on educational injustice. But we also have experience, and I think the important thing is to bring the experience to the table as well. Where we've come from, what we've seen, combined with empirical data, ought to make a compelling case for change. And so, someone who works in public health space, you got to be data driven. You have to take a look at the evidence, and you have to be evidence based and data driven. And so, I believe that's a part of the process.
So, do you know other commissioners in the commission, or do you know them as people?
I do know some of them. I do know some of them personally. Representative Rachel Talbot Ross is on the commission, and I know her personally. Garrett Stewart is someone who's on the commission, and I know him personally as well. I've not gone through the entire list of individuals. I've not had a chance to speak with everyone. But there are some folks I do know.
What's the total number of commissioners? How many people are there in the commission?
You're going to make me look it up.
No, that's fine.
I think there are maybe 7 or 8. Something like that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so what part of our mission as Amjambo Africa is to get people understand and embrace and celebrate diversity. And maybe this will go along with what you're just talking. It's just like some people view diversity as as something that they shouldn't even think about, and others see as resources and richness in terms of culture and all the skills that are brought together, but others don't even mind. And I just, the reason why I'm happy to have you here is because you're going to help us understand all this. And for people who are just coming in here in this country, will get a sense as to what is this country has to say and all that. So, but let's go back now to the recent horrible event of the death of George Floyd. And when it happened, it was just like a horrible event and people were devastated by it. What do you have to say about that particular event?
It's an atrocity. I've seen it too many times, where Black man oftentimes is mischaracterized and brutalized by the hands of law enforcement when it's not necessary, right? And so I also serve on the City of Portland's Police Citizens Review Subcommittee, and we review all of those internal affairs cases. So when you've seen and you've experienced mistreatment or maltreatment by authority figures, whether it's a teacher, police officer, simply because you look different, you're not part of the majority, it's devastating. So you have an individual who, for 8 minutes and 37 seconds, maybe, an officer has a knee across his neck for absolutely no reason. And you have other officers who are standing around watching and don't feel empowered to do anything. And they all know it's wrong. And so that's an abuse of power. And so I think for my African brothers and sisters, you've not seen this here that often. I've seen it a lot. And I could imagine the thoughts may take you back to a war-torn place, a place where, you know, certain tribal elders or certain groups were doing atrocious things to people because they had different religion, or they were women, or they were, and it shocks the system, because when you come here, you're not expecting that, right?
Yes, right.
And oftentimes, because of immigration, you come looking for a better place, looking for an opportunity, and sometimes you come at your own volition. I'm reading this book, which is a fascinating book, and I think maybe some of your listeners or readers should read it. It's called The Making of African American. I sent you a
yes, I saw it.
Brazilian copy of that, and it talks about the migrations of people and how we continue to remake society, remake culture. I think Maine is late in remaking culture and remaking society because of a lack of integration, right? So we don't integrate one with another. This is the first time you and I have talked.
I know.
Right? And you've been here how long?
I've been here 18 years old, and I'm 18 years now.
So you've been here 18 years. I came here in 2003, and you and I have never talked.
I know. I came in 2002.
Right? Because we tend to operate in our certain spaces.
Right.
And so one of the things that I think that I bring to this is an ability to be a bit of a cultural broker, to speak honestly about African American experience, and you will become the part of the African American experience, whether you want to or not.
I know. Yeah.
Right. And while you can reach back to home because you have a place that you started.
Yes.
This is the place that you are. You can bring some of that place with you. Yeah. But you can't bring it all.
That's right.
Right. And you have to then, I don't want to say assimilate, but you have to then understand the place that you're in. I've been here my whole life. I know this place really well.
I know.
And what has to happen is that we have to trust one another enough to educate one another, to share with one another, so that while the types of things with George Floyd will shock you, you'll have someone like me or others who can explain to you that that's not new.
Yeah.
And of 18 years here, you've seen this more than once, right?
Yes.
And so I think it's important for us to have honest conversations and understand that that everyone is not operating from a place of veracity.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so that's a very good segue to the question I was going to ask you. When I saw the video, I just thought that as someone from DRC Congo and New American, I was thinking maybe we're thrown into this sea of racism, and we don't know how to swim out of it. And part of the things that we do, we help immigrants to navigate the system. So walk me through at your young age, growing up, in a neighborhood in Massachusetts, I heard, and that's where you were born. So
Boston.
Boston, and things that you've seen yourself. Let's just start from the beginning. So you were young, growing up in a family with the parents. So you go out, you start seeing this racism against you, and how were you able to navigate through? And things that if there are some of the experiences you can share, and how you're able to cope with them and get out of it, and then move on. Because now where you are, you've done quite a lot. You've accomplished a lot, given even in this current situation of racism and a systematic
I think the thing is that African Americans have had to become very resilient people, right? In order to keep your family going and to take care of folks. But as a child growing up in Boston, I grew up in a very turbulent time during forced desegregation of schools. I never knew I was a minority until I went to a certain school where I looked like a minority. We went to school in our neighborhood. Boston was a kind of a segregated city. Black people lived here, white people lived here, and here. Yeah. And so there was not a whole lot of intermingling or a lot of intermixing, except for maybe on public transportation or going downtown or what have you. But the issues really arise with some of the contact you have with authority figures, whether they're teachers who are overtly against you, or police who will question you or jostle you or what have you for no good reason, or you can feel when you're not wanted.
Exactly, yeah.
You can feel these what they call today, it's called microaggressions. But I say back then they were probably very macro aggressions. We knew where to go, where not to go.
Okay.
I tend to tell a story about when I was about 14 or 15 years old during the Christmas season. A friend and I, we went shopping downtown Boston. We both worked as young people. We were buying Christmas gifts. We have bags full of Christmas gifts. Stopped into a restaurant to get some takeout food, and in come two police officers. Someone got robbed, and you look like the people that robbed them. We didn't look like the people that robbed them. I don't know why we would. And in this restaurant, poked and prodded and yelled. And I still remember what I said to the officer. I didn't steal anything. I don't know who you're looking for. And that probably didn't make him happy. I talked back a little bit. And I asked a question, and what time did the robbery take place? And I said, I got receipts in my bag for everything that I purchased.
Yes.
The people in the restaurant were allies, but they could not stop the police from bothering us. Ultimately, went in my bag, took out my receipt, saw the timestamp on my receipt. And I said, I told you I didn't steal anything. He then took everything that I owned in those two bags and dumped it out on the floor, and then walked out. So now I'm scared because I don't know if they're outside.
Yes.
I'm terrified because I don't know if I can go around the corner and catch the bus to go home. They called us a taxi, and we only had enough money to take a taxi so far. So we took a taxi out of the immediate area, got out of the cab, waited at the bus stop, and then we went home. I don't think a 15-year-old should experience that.
No. So when did you have any conversation with your parents? Like they knew?
Oh, yes.
So what was they like? That's one thing that I'm struggling with, because I have a son and he's soon to be 12 years old, and he's growing up very fast, and soon he'll be going out at college and all everything. And so what kind of a conversation did you have with your parents, sitting on kitchen table and talking through things, and how were they sending a message out there that you're very innocent and they're young, they're growing up, but yet these are the things they have to be?
Well, that's what my father taught me when I was a child, when I was probably 11, 12 years old, right?
Okay.
We call it the talk.
Okay.
Oftentimes the talk that parents would have with their sons,
Yeah.
who understand that, that you're a Black person, and that there's racism out there. People don't like you just because you're Black.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about how you have to work twice as hard to get a little bit far.
Yeah.
What to do if you get stopped.
Yes.
What to do, where to put your hands.
Okay.
Things of that sort. I've been in the car when we've been stopped by the police, and my father would tell everyone to be quiet, nobody say anything.
Okay.
Be still. When we were small, right? I've seen those kinds of things, you learn early on,
Yeah.
how to sense and see.
Yes.
Situations, and so a younger generation may not sense and see it because racism is ugly, right?
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
changes. It's not as overt as it used to be. If you look at American history, it's covert, so it's undercover.
Yes.
You don't necessarily understand some of the language that is race-based, some of the situations that are race-based.
Yeah.
For someone that's older who've seen a lot of different things, you have a keener awareness of when someone is exercising privilege, right? And so there's another book that's called Racism Without Racists.
Okay.
See, racism is a system, right?
Right.
It's not necessarily a person. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have underlying systems and reactions and responses that I might notice
Mm-hmm.
that you will not.
Right.
I'll have a memory jog,
Yeah.
and you don't have a perspective on it.
Yeah.
And while I may see it as being, I can't believe you allowed someone to talk to you that way.
Yeah.
You don't notice it.
Yeah.
So I have a real issue with a white man referring to me as boy,
Mm-hmm.
because I was taught that couldn't happen.
Okay.
That the only person who could call me boy was my father.
Who told you that? Was it
my father told me that?
Okay. Okay.
Because in this country, a grown man referred to a boy as a pejorative. It's a master slave.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the man never become a man
Mm-hmm.
dynamic.
Yes.
And I'm super sensitive to that. Here in Maine, some years ago, coming out of a clubhouse with two other Black men
Mm-hmm.
playing golf, an older white man said, "Hey boys." My colleague said hello. I looked at the man like he was crazy. They were from Maine. I was not. They were from a different space that I was from. So I'm from the inner city of Boston.
Yeah.
And I said to them both, "How dare you allow that man to call you a boy?" And especially one of the guys was probably as old as he was, right? And so, and the old guy may not have meant anything by it.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's institutionalized,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
it creates a visceral reaction in me.
I see. So how did you react to the teaching of your parents when they were telling you, like, look, I know you're going out, but these are the things they have to be careful with? And how did you grasp it, or was it like maybe?
I grasped it.
Overreactive.
Because I've seen people beat down. I've witnessed things, and so I was in the environment. If you go back and read about forced, where Black families, the kids were put on school buses and sent to white neighborhoods, and some white kids were sent to Black neighborhoods because the schools were segregated by neighborhood.
Yeah.
That was they were also segregated by race.
Yes.
And the courts changed that,
Mm-hmm.
and it created riots, and it was a mess.
Okay.
And so you saw the vitriol from people for no other reason that they didn't want certain people in their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think their kids should be in the same schools.
So walk me through, again, I'm going through the road of any new person here. So you are here and work. So how about the workforce? Like when you graduated from high school and then started looking for a job, how was your experience and how would you compare with the people who are now looking up for a job? Because we all need better life. We all need decent jobs to be able to pay our bills and send our kids to school and buy houses and all that. So walk me through that as somebody who's...
And so, you know, I was fortunate. I went to school and I found good opportunities. I've been working since I was really young.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some pretty good mentors. I worked in financial services. I worked in the mutual fund industry. I worked in healthcare. But when I was in high school, I actually was part of a program in Boston called the Boston Private Industry Council.
Mm-hmm.
And my first real job was working in a bank.
Okay.
It wasn't working in environmental services.
Okay.
Right? It was working in a bank. And so my perspective was, this is the kind of work I'm going to do. I've never worked at a fast food restaurant. I've never, and I did some groundskeeping because that's the work that my father did. And I worked with him over the summertime for apartment complexes. That's the most sweeping and mopping I've ever done in my life.
Okay.
But I realized really early on that that was not the kind of work that I was cut out for. I wasn't going to be a construction worker. I was going to be a business related person. And that's what I studied and that's what I plan to do. But I think exposure to those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember I worked for a financial services organization in Boston when my nephew was coming back from college.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of two Black officers, VP or above in this organization of 5,000.
Yeah.
One of the first Black interns in that organization was my nephew.
Okay.
Because he had access, because I had access.
That's right.
Right. And so this is the thing that we have to do as community. We have to create access. For an immigrant who comes into the United States, oftentimes the work that's afforded them is frontline work, right?
Yes.
That's why we have high COVID exposure today.
Mm-hmm.
It's dealing with the public, it's environmental services, it may be caring for people, right?
Yeah.
In congregate housing, CNA kind of work or what have you. It's working in the hotels and so forth. It's the jobs that other people don't want anymore.
Yeah.
And it's the front end job.
Mm-hmm.
How do you grow from there?
Exactly.
Unless other people begin to take other types of roles and create the pipeline, it becomes difficult to economically grow.
Mm-hmm.
I think the difference with immigrant population is that you still congregate a lot. So there might be children and grandchildren and parents, and there's still this pooling of resources in order for the entire family to grow. I don't know, when you first came here, how many people lived in your household at one time?
Oh yeah, there were many of us in the same house, and then there were not that many people from Africa at that time when I came in 2002. So it was just like few of us, and we had to help one another, like you said.
You continue to help one another, and what you have in common. Were you all from the DRC?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah, and so you were there to support one another, and then you pooled what you had. Yeah. To create opportunities for your kids and yourselves, right? Yeah. And who could you look to that could open a door? Yeah. Who could you look to that you could help navigate? I think that's where the issue becomes, is that we have to continue to make ourselves available to another generation. We need to talk around our tables, our dinner tables, not just with our own families, but with those who are like us, right? And so that we can learn from one another. You can cooperate within your household to better life.
Mm-hmm.
And in my world, you grow up, you move out.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then you go take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. So, so if you look at, I don't know how many people were in your neighborhood, in like a Black community in Boston. How many, like when you're growing up, how you've seen some people failing and yet you were able to succeed? And so those who failed, do you think it's because they didn't have anybody to help them up, or was
I think some did. I was blessed that I had a strong family,
Mm-hmm.
and a really big family too.
Okay.
When I say big, I'm talking about my cousins and my aunts, and we were always together, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we were always encouraged. I think I think poverty creates a problem for people.
Yes.
And when there's poverty and the destruction of the family, where there's drugs and other vices, it destroys communities. It destroys families, and it destroys opportunities.
Yeah.
And so I think that, I have family members who were destroyed, who died too early, whether it was because of drugs or crime or what have you. But the vast majority of my extended family do very well.
That's good to know.
Because they were encouraged, and almost all of them were in a very father, mother, family, siblings, cousins, and we had a place, so there was a place that we could go where my father and his siblings were born and raised, which was Martha's Vineyard, Oak Bluffs. That's where they were from. And our family can always gather around those family stories, gather around. We were in school together. We were best friends. So, your first best friends are your siblings. Your second best friends are your cousins. And we all grew up together. So,
so we are about to go to the end. And one of the questions that I'm going to ask you is that given the effort that was put into changing the system here in America, you go back many years ago from the time abolition, and then you go to the Jim Crow and the civil rights, and where we are now, we're talking about Black Lives Matter. What do you think where we are versus where we have to be, and what can we do to get there? And I know it's very
the poem says, "Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope had died." So I think, are things better for some? Yes. Does that mean racism is gone? No.
Okay.
I don't think you can't legislate this. I think conscious and conscience is important. I think we're in an environment now, a space now where the allies, those who are on our side, can't lead.
Okay.
The people have to rise up themselves, as you see these marches and things of that sort. Black men and women have to rise up, and we have to also band together.
Okay.
So we have to find those things that are in common, use our collective energy to make things better for each one of us. And we'll never be satisfied until all of us have something better.
Okay.
So if you look at the 400 years of history of Blacks on these shores, there's been a Band-Aid every time. And I'll say that, I've said this before, you cannot have reconstruction without deconstruction.
Okay.
And the system has been built and forged and fashioned to prefer someone other than me. You can't put a new thing on that and tell me that the system is going to work for me.
Okay, that's very complex. So what do you?
What I say is that that's a really difficult task, right?
Yes.
So we have to deconstruct pieces of this system, piece by piece.
Okay.
And so if you talk about education, opportunity for education, education should be available to whoever wants it.
Exactly, yeah.
So education shouldn't be a business.
Mm-hmm.
Education should be a right.
Yeah.
You should have the opportunity for a free public education.
Mm-hmm.
And for economics, from work.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone should have the opportunity for higher opportunities from a workplace,
yeah.
which means human resources departments and the institutional conscious of companies has to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean just creating a program of diversity. That means having people in there that are diverse.
Yeah.
That means expanding your hiring pools,
mm-hmm.
expanding the people that you seek to employ in order to reflect the community you serve.
Mm-hmm.
That means taking a look at laws
mm-hmm.
through the lens of a civil right,
okay.
through the lens of diversity, equity, or inclusion, and say, is this going to be a benefit to everyone? And then, quite frankly, when people talk about reparations, and you've heard that talked about before,
yeah. mm-hmm.
Some people might be looking for money. To me, reparations is really about spending some time repairing what's broken.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are a lot of things that are broken.
Yeah.
I think in some instances, the Justice Department is broken, the Education Department is broken because it doesn't serve people equally.
That's right. Wow.
And so people like you and me,
mm-hmm.
and others and our children have to find those things we have in common, even though we may have some things that are different.
Right.
And commit to one another as brothers and
yeah.
sisters that we will work
yeah.
together to make things happen and to make things better.
Oh, great. I heard your TED talk, and you said something that has resonated with me. It says no deposit, no return.
No deposit, no return.
And the other thing you mentioned that I was very fascinating was that you say that emotional banks, like people have to deposit into people's lives, like people.
Absolutely. I didn't know you looked at the TED talk, but
I did.
But anyway, and so every day.
Yeah.
So right now you're making a deposit into me.
Okay.
And I hope I'm making a deposit into you that we'll walk away with more than when we started.
Yes.
As a pastor, part of what I have to do is make deposits into people's lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm there at the birth and I'm there at the death.
Okay. Yeah.
And so every single day, the point is, if I helped someone along the way?
Mm-hmm.
Have I been a listening ear to someone along the way?
Yeah.
Have I encouraged somebody today?
Mm-hmm.
Have they encouraged me? Even if it was not their intention.
Yeah.
How do you take a bad thing and turn it into something good?
That's all right.
Right? And so oftentimes I learn the most by the most challenging circumstances, not the easiest ones.
Yeah.
And which means I have to be, self-aware, and I have to be reflective in the things that I do. Similar to what I said on my birthday, I tend to reflect on things and I don't do this big celebration.
Yeah. So the last question that I asked to ask is, so you see that there's a Black American community, but there's also immigrant Black people who've come here. Do you think people are getting along, given the fact that they share the same concerns in terms of being discriminated against? And does there any effort that is trying to pull them together as the one community that's sharing the same concerns and trying to advocate for the issue they care most?
No, I don't think that happens here.
Why is that?
I think that we're still very territorial.
Okay.
And still very connected to the place of origin.
Okay.
Right? And so I see a lot of celebrations of Congo. I see a lot of celebrations of Angolans. I see a lot of celebrations of, Ghanaians, Burundi, all these different celebrations, all these different leadership, all these different subgroups, our Somalian brothers and sisters and so forth, all these different subgroups. When do the groups come together and say, we have something in common?
Mm-hmm.
I've not been to one of those meetings yet. I've not been invited to one. And so I don't know if they happen.
Do you want to initiate some?
I don't know. See, I don't know if I'm the person to initiate it.
Okay.
I think I'm the person to participate in it.
Okay.
There are a lot of leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and I think what leaders have to do, leaders' focus ought to be on building
Mm-hmm.
individuals and groups, not
Yeah.
building their own profiles.
Exactly. I agree.
That means we got to bring people together on a common goal, a common vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that the diaspora has a common goal,
Yeah.
even if it's down to the family level. I want my family to be strong,
Yeah.
stable,
Mm-hmm.
economically, from a health standpoint, from an education standpoint,
Yes.
regardless of what my nation of origin is.
Yeah.
Again, the book that I'm reading talks about our connection to place,
Yeah.
but also how African American culture changes when we come together.
Yeah.
Whether we're from the Caribbean, from the Americas,
Yeah.
or from the continent, right?
Yes.
We come together because we have something in common.
In common, we do. Yeah, that's true.
The drum beats in our heart, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of where we started, where we came
Yeah.
from, that drum beat is in our heart.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, let me just say this. Years ago, when I was pastoring in Amherst, Massachusetts,
Mm-hmm.
there's a woman. She was from South Africa. Her name, I just called her Mother Jordan.
Okay.
And she was at the church, and she decided that when she went back home, she was going to. I asked her. She wanted to know what she could do for me, and I said, name me. Give me a name.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a name that's not from here. Give me a name from where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And she went home, and about 6 months later, I guess she said it to her daughter, and her daughter wrote it down and gave it to me.
Okay.
She named me Musa.
Musa.
Moses, I guess.
Yeah, Musa, yeah.
When Kesu.
Yeah.
I guess it was, and I may say it wrong, but it's Son of Grace.
Son of Grace. Wow, good name.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was so meaningful to me because it took her so long to decide what that name was going to be.
6 months after that.
6 months later, we had an impact on each other.
Yeah.
We found something in common.
Yeah.
And she graced me with giving me this name.
Wow.
I don't use it, but it's deep inside.
I see. Wow.
So I care
Yeah.
for my brothers and sisters. And I want the best for us all.
Absolutely. Reverend Lewiss, this is a very good, and we're almost at the end of our conversation, and this is not the first time. I'm sure I'm going to invite you again and talk more on other issues that we know that are very important to our community. But now I know you're a husband, you're parents, you're a pastor, you're also a leader in the community. What do you have to say, given all this that's happening in the country, the pandemic that we never experienced before? It's hard to cope with it. There's so many hearts that are broken. And we also have this whole racial disparity going on in the country. What is that you can tell as a hope to people? And when they walk out of this conversation, they will say, okay, I heard this, and this is what I can take on. And I like to do that every time I do the interview.
Sure. I mean, I really think that we have to understand that collectively, we have power together. We have the ability to create change if we work together.
Yeah.
In a space where the pandemic is ravaging our people, and a lot of the immigrant population who are working on the front lines, the economic issues with layoffs, oftentimes adversely impact, that we have to stay together. We can't allow our differences to separate our agendas. We have to learn to trust each other.
Yeah.
And that comes from a place of love, right? Yeah. And that we have to be involved in our communities. We have to open up our mouths and speak truth to power, which is not something that is always easy to do. And if we as an individual can't speak truth to power, we have to be connected with people that will. You can trust people, but you also have to verify, right? And we also can have allies, but allies cannot lead you to the promised land. Right. You got to walk there yourself.
You got to do the work for yourself.
You got to do the work for yourself. And when I say for yourself, I'm saying as an individual, but also as a group.
As a group, yeah.
If you and I do the work, the only people that benefit are you and I, we failed our community. Yeah. And what I don't want us to do is to fail our community.
Absolutely.
Because while today, you may consider yourself, well, after 18 years, you still may say, I'm an immigrant because you weren't born here. Right. You spent 18 years in this country. Yeah. You have some Americanism in you. You know a lot of it. Yeah. Your children, if they were born here, they're not immigrants.
Right, they're not, yeah.
And so how do we teach our kids that at the end of the day, we're all family?
I know. Yes.
And that's how I look at us. We're all family.
Yeah.
I don't look like you, but we're family.
We are.
I don't come from where you come from, but we're family.
Yes.
The world looks at us the exact same.
Yes. Thank you so much, Reverend Lewiss. And I wish you well throughout this.
I look forward to sitting down with you sometime face to face.
We will. We will get time, yes.
Over a cup of tea or a cup of coffee.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ibihe bizashika abami bahinduke abantu benshi bazibagira rya jambo ry'ifatiro